So I'm Nitika Chopra. I'm the founder of Chronicon, and you are watching our Chronic Convo for the week. All of you joining, we love to hear you in the comments. We love to see you waving at us, so please do that. And I'm joined here with the incredible Amina AlTai. She is an amazing business and success coach. And the reason why I wanted to speak with Amina today specifically is because she really reinvented what success was for her when she was diagnosed with her chronic conditions. And so she knows all about what it's like to live with a chronic illness. And we are going to talk to her about that today. So, hi.
Hi, amazing lady. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to see your face.
I'm so happy to see your face. It's so lovely and you're so beautiful.
Oh my
And
God, you too, sister, in every way.
so this is going to be a total love fest and I'm really excited about it. So let's dive right in. First of all, anyone who's joining us, I see a bunch of people have joined. Please ask us questions in the comments. Feel free to interact with us. We love being here with you. And yeah, Amina, I'd love to just start by hearing a little bit about your story and what has you be a part of the Chronicon community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for being you and for creating this space in this community. You are everything. Okay, there's going to be a lot of love festing today. Just everyone be forewarned. I have big hearts for this woman. So a little bit about who I am. So I'm Amina. I'm a holistic leadership and mindset coach and also a chronic illness advocate. I have 3 chronic illnesses. I got a new one during the pandemic, which I will share more about.
Really?
Yeah, but what really brought me to this journey was sort of my own trajectory. I grew up in an amazing family system, but we really valued hard work and doing versus being and sitting in stillness. And I really carried that into my programming and my career. And I worked in marketing for about a decade. And while I was running my own agency, I had kind of a major crash and burn. I had no boundaries really. And I was just deriving my sense of self-worth from my work. And I literally worked myself into the ground. And I was diagnosed with 2 autoimmune diseases, with Hashimoto's and celiac disease. And at the point of my diagnosis, I was so run down and so malnourished because they had been undiagnosed for quite some time, that my doctor called me and basically was like, you are days away from multiple organ failure if you don't go to the hospital now. And it was just like this total stop moment where I had to reevaluate everything. There was no questioning. It was just like, we've got to choose another way. So which way will it be?
Totally. That must have been so, I just want to take that in for a second because that must have been so devastating. I feel like, because I know so many people who are just going and achieving and success. And I think that's a lot of what this pandemic and this moment has also showed us and taught us, because, we don't really have those systems to be a part of like we used to, and especially not the way that we used to. And so I just can't imagine. I mean, this was years ago now, so it wasn't like this just happened, but then sort of being yanked out of that trajectory and out of that cycle and that wheel, and then being told, if you don't stop, like your health is going to be so challenged from that and completely just debilitated almost.
Yeah. I don't think in that moment I could fully receive and absorb everything that my doctor was saying to me. All I knew was this was kind of like a bit of a triage moment and I had to change something. But I don't think I fully understood the depth or the level of my programming that had kind of gotten me to this place. And yes, it's not just the programming and it's not just the conditions that I created for myself. There's all these other, chronic illness is so complex. But there were conditions that I set up for myself that weren't serving me, that really exacerbated certain things. But I don't think I understood the depth or the gravity until much later. It was sort of this let me take this next right action and I will keep exploring.
I totally get that. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to honor and honestly admit, even because I feel like not everyone, I think there's a lot of shame around that. Like if you don't fully get it at first and you just kind of try to pull and push and continue the cycle, and you maybe take a little bit more time to really understand the severity of things, I think people can feel some shame around that.
Yeah, I think that's
Do you feel any shame? I'm
looking for I feel all the shame.
You did? Oh my God. I
So,
want to shut off this light because it's really hot. That's why I'm looking around, but I'm listening to you.
okay. So initially, I think with those first two diagnoses, I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily feel shame. I felt very confused. I didn't
Yeah.
know where to go. And it took me 7 different doctors before I got these diagnoses. So there was a lot of like feeling unseen, unheard, misunderstood. Feeling like there was stuff like knowing deep inside me something wasn't right and just trying to
Mhm.
find the people who could help me and believe me. And so for
Wow.
almost, I think there was almost a sense of validation when I did get those labels or those diagnoses.
Yes.
But fast forward to this point, I was diagnosed with Addison's disease during the pandemic, which is an autoimmune condition that impacts your adrenals. And I actually
Mhm.
felt so much shame around it because I was
Mhm.
like, I thought I got this. I thought that I was, really treating my body beautifully and that we were in a healthier relationship than we've ever been.
Yeah.
And I just felt, a big sense of shame. And particularly being a coach and a teacher, I think sometimes there's this idea that you've quote unquote got it all figured out and that we're not
Yeah.
going to be challenged. And yeah, so I definitely was rumbling with shame, and you helped me so much in this process.
Well, I'm so glad, but I really appreciate that too, because I think that's something I felt recently. Like in the last couple of years, I had gone through a flare and just some challenges with my health that I just didn't understand. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? I have been dealing with this for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Like you don't get actually 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can this be coming up again? Like, I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with me that I let this happen, which is really like where I go is like, how did I create this? And how did I let this happen? Which is, I know if my friend ever said that to me, I would be like, absolutely not. You are not allowed to talk to yourself that way. But in my head, I was just like overwhelmed by that feeling. So I really, really resonate with what you're saying. And what do you do? So I know you work with clients, and you have clients that you work with on their rhythms of success and creating abundance and all of that in their lives and getting the dreams that they want and actually achieving them. But how do you work with those clients when they're dealing with stuff like this? Like, what would you say to someone?
So if I were meeting me in my 20s when I had that, that stop moment, I like to call it, I would be doing deep work around core beliefs around success and relationship to money and self-worth and all of those things because we have, like in the US, we're in a capitalistic society that's also quite individualistic as well. And so inherent in that are challenges, right? We learn to derive our sense of self-worth from how much we earn or from the shiny objects or from the big juicy title. And I was an immigrant and, the American dream was like so real in our family and you want to achieve these certain things. But then I started to derive my self-worth outside of myself. And I was chasing all these things and chasing and chasing. And that's not healthy, right? That leads us down a path. And for me, it led me partially down the path of chronic illness. And so if I were meeting me in my 20s, I would be like, well, what do you believe about success? Where did you learn that? Is that true for you? Do you want that definition to be true for you? Can we redefine this specific to you? Yeah. And so when I meet women like me or you, the invitation really is to create work from a space that feels really authentic to us. So looking at like where your genius is, looking at the dream that you have for your life and the conditions that you want to create. So for example, like I have chronic illness, you have chronic illness, and I'm noticing now, particularly with the Addison's disease diagnosis, it's not possible for me to work the hours that I was working. So part of my new dream is, well, how do I actually condense the schedule and make it more supportive of my whole experience of my body too? Yeah. So designing from that place. And then the other thing is also aligning with the impact that we want to have, because I believe that we all incarnated in this lifetime to have a beautiful impact like you are having with Chronicon. And so inviting people to really connect to the impact. And that way we choose work that's more in alignment, again, with our soul and what we're called to do versus just like doing for doing's sake. Because I don't believe in that. And I also don't believe that when we have chronic conditions, we can do that. Like we can't just do for doing's sake. Like we really have to be so, considered with where we choose to spend our heartbeats.
I love that. That's such a beautiful way of saying that. I completely agree. And I love what you touched on about like really understanding what your genius is, which I know you and I have talked about that a lot, but what does that really mean for somebody that's maybe listening that, you know, wants to do all of these things? Like, how do you know what your genius is?
Yeah, I love this. And I actually just led a session on it for a client today. And it's so interesting because every time I do this work with a client, everyone, the first thing out of everybody's mouth is, I don't have genius. And I'm just like, everybody has genius. Like, we are all snowflakes. We all have this amazing, unique version of genius inside of us. We might have grown up in structures, family, culture, society that valued certain things over others. So we might have learned to discount our genius. So this work is really about finding the spaces where you are in flow, where you can contribute by far and away, in the highest way. Maybe you far outpace your peers, or you just think about it so differently. What you contribute is so unique and so special. And so it's about identifying those pieces, but we're often really trained to focus on our excellence versus our genius. So the excellence are the places where we're like practiced, polished, and really proficient, where we worked really hard to gain skills. So for me, that was my marketing career. I worked really hard to gain the skills there, and I got really good at it. And that excellence kind of benefits other people more than it benefits you, right? It benefits all the clients that I worked for. But when we harness our genius, we show up in a way that's so authentic to us, but also it's much less effortless. There's no efforting. It kind of flows through us. So we use way less energy and mind share, which again is so beautiful in the context of this conversation, being like, well, I don't have to pull from areas where I don't have the energy. I can harness the flow.
Totally. I love that. And so what you're basically saying and breaking down for people is that, you know, when you know and you understand and you kind of have this intimate relationship with whatever your genius is, and we all have that, then it kind of feeds into what you're saying about when people have a chronic condition or they have situations in their life that have them needing to work a little bit more strategically and not necessarily just have this outpouring of effort all the time, or, you know, like they actually need to maximize whatever hours that they have that they're feeling well, is kind of the way that I think about it. So that feeds into that, right?
Yeah, that was so beautifully synthesized. And so Gay Hendricks is a psychologist, and he wrote a book on this. It's called The Big Leap. And he basically breaks it down into 4 zones. So there's genius, excellence, competence, and incompetence. And like no judgment or shame about where we show up in which, like we just kind of want to focus on, you know, where we can maximize. And so it's a beautiful exercise to look at the different zones and then how we're spending our days, because oftentimes we might notice that we're spending a lot of time in the area of competence or incompetence, and those are the areas where we're kind of average or below average, and we use so much energy just to show up averagely. So it's like, well, what's the point? I can have way bigger of an impact if I lean into the genius. And so it's an invitation to step deeper into that. And then yes, we do then get to use the hours where we're feeling good in the highest impact way.
Yeah, I love that. And hi, Sarah. I see Fabulous and Fatigued Sarah is saying hi to us.
Hi, Sarah.
Love her. Yeah, I really love that. And something that you were mentioning before is just about this like capitalistic, you know, society, and just how much we are, it's so ingrained in us that we're supposed to be just pounding the pavement. Like that's literally what we're supposed to be aspiring to, you know? And yeah, how are we supposed to sort of carve out something different when, like it's not like our society isn't really set up for that? Do you know what I mean? Like what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. And
what
we've had all the answers for it. But I do think that a moment like that we're in, where all the illusions are being shattered, I think a lot of companies are reimagining how they work. So basically, like Gen Z, for example, is the most like heart-driven, amazing generation that's so connected to values and impact. And they have the most fantastic BS meter. They can tell when a brand or a company is spinning them a story or is like really authentically caring about their people. So I believe that we're in a moment where businesses are going to have to put humans first, money second, where we really have to focus on like caring about all of our constituents, the people that work for us, our consumers, like really focusing on the human and the money piece coming second. And I think about this in small business too, and particularly in the wellness space. I work with a lot of people in the wellness space. And, you know, I think that sometimes we walk a certain path, right? We start kind of in the capitalistic structure and we're like, well, I feel like I had to sell my soul and I can't do that anymore. So now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do the great work of my life. But I feel like I can't make the money that I want to make in the great work of my life. But like it doesn't, they're not mutually exclusive, right? We could actually give up the capitalistic structure. We could put human first. We can do the great work of our life and we can make the money that we want to make. I don't believe that we have to choose, but I think sometimes our brain thinks that we have to walk that way and then we come back to the realization.
Mm.
But I think that we're in a moment that is having everybody reevaluate how they do business. And like I said, Gen Z really coming in strong, calling everybody in and saying, like, this is what we want for our world. And I think brands and businesses are responding.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think it's really hard, like, especially for those of us that do have chronic illnesses, that, like, you know, and I always think about this with like the privilege conversation, like there have been so many times while building my dreams that I've had to work, a full-time job. I've had to get consulting clients. I've had to do all of these other things. But and a lot of that is because like I have major medical bills, I have medications I have to pay for, I have health insurance, like, and I know what this is like too, like seeing specialists, like they're so expensive, and
So expensive.
all of that has to come into play. So I think it's a really interesting sort of challenge that I hear you bringing up, which I think is the challenge of this moment. And how do we, take these dreams and these ideas and these things that we want for ourselves and these things that we know are so much of our heart and what we're meant to be focusing on. But we basically are also trying to do it while like dismantling capitalism at the same time.
Yeah.
Like it really is that.
It's so much. It's so much. And yeah, I just want to underscore everything that you're saying, that it can be really challenging to like quote unquote balance it all, right? Like, and I walked the same way that you walked too, like having kind of the day job or the side gig as you build the dream, because you have to like pay for all these specialists. I remember my accountant one year sat me down, was like, "You're spending how much on doctors?" And I was like, "Listen, I wish it could be a different way." But
Yeah,
that's
I'm like,
the
I'd
reality.
rather spend it on anything else.
Right,
But
exactly. I would be happy to have a closet full of shoes versus like
yeah,
spend all this money on the doctors. But
totally. And
yeah,
supplements.
yeah, supplements. My supplement drawer is pretty
Oh,
serious.
exhausting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
Um, yeah, and so I do believe it is about alignment, aligning with our authentic code of the spaces where we can have the highest impact for the least amount of time. And this is something that I feel like in deep discovery and feel really deeply called to share and talk more about, of like how can we maximize really by using our genius, by honoring our worth and delivering in the most impactful way. Like essentially, like how does the chronic illness community work the least and get the most amount of money? That's what I want to figure out.
Snaps for that.
Yep.
I'm snapping for that. And Sarah's saying, or travel. Yes, I literally find myself fantasizing about traveling post COVID, like all the time. I'm just like, oh, I can't wait to try this thing and go to this place and see this place. So yes, I'm super into the travel. But yeah, I love that. And I love the part about just figuring out like how do we maximize our energy like we're talking about. And I found for myself, I think over the years of building, all the different companies and projects that I've had, I've noticed that I've had a lot of discomfort around, like sometimes when I was building stuff, I'd be like, okay, I kind of just like want to take the rest of the afternoon off and not like go to 5 meetings right now, or not like stay up till 2 a.m. writing some like article or whatever. I just kind of want to just have these 4 things that I have to do in front of me this week, and that's it, and that's enough. And it actually ends up usually being more than enough. But how do we sort of practice that? Like, how do we put that into practice when we maybe want to make that switch?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're more apt to speak on this than I am. You're so good about it. I do think it really comes down to those fierce boundaries and being unapologetic in our boundaries, because our bodies have to work really hard for us to show up. They're literally working so hard for us to be able to go to those meetings. And we can't, like we talked about the spoon theory with chronic illnesses, like we only have a set amount of spoons. We just can't be giving them away willy-nilly. We have to be really strategic and considered in terms of where we're using those spoons. And so the fierce boundaries about what you will show up for and what you can't show up for. And obviously like voicing it lovingly. We love everybody. But there are some things that we can do, and there's some things that doesn't feel like is the best use of our time and our energy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that as much as like it might seem counterintuitive because like we want to say yes to this abundant, like big, exciting, juicy life and fulfilling our dreams, I think that it's actually so much more about saying no to so many things,
Yeah.
which is what you're saying with the boundaries.
Hmm. Wait, I've forgotten her name right now. I'm like drawing a blank. The woman sparks joy. She's all
Oh,
about
Marie Kondo.
Marie Kondo. Marie Kondo does 3 things a day. That's all. She's like, I'm never doing more than 3 things a day. Doesn't matter what's happening in the world. And like, she's huge now, right? She has her Netflix show. She has a whole train the trainer program.
Yes.
Like, but she never does more than 3 things a day. So I think that we can have the big, juicy, and abundant and be really focused on what's in our highest and best.
Yes, I love that. And she's such a
Mhm.
great example because as you're saying, she has a huge empire,
Mhm.
and she's a mom, I
Yeah.
believe, and
Two little ones.
2 kids. Yeah. So
Yeah.
she's got, I mean, if that's something that you're looking to have and a family and all of that. And so it is really interesting that she's made that choice for herself. And I
Mhm.
think, yeah, I love that example. I think as, part of the chronic illness community, like we can totally make those choices for ourselves. And I do think it's this reckoning within yourself and then also not letting yourself get too swept up in like the media or compare and despair or whatever.
Yeah. Yes. I think that every outlet wants to talk about hustle. Every outlet wants to talk about despair. Every outlet wants to attach our worth to our productivity. And I think that there's a big opportunity for us now to really flip the script and like reclaim that narrative.
Mm, yeah, I love that so much. Okay, great. So now I'm like, now that we know that we can do that, like, so would you say our first step to really, let's say the steps are figuring out what your zone of genius is,
Mhm.
sounds like one. Is there like a thing that we do to figure that out?
Yeah, so I actually have this worksheet that I will give you. It's my authentic passion and purpose worksheet. So I'm aligning basically your genius with what you want to impact with what you need. So I need to like sleep X amount of hours and I need to only work these amount of hours and I need to make this amount of money. So align it with the needs, what we value and what brings us joy. And
Nice.
then basically through that, we'll kind of synthesize all the options and you distill it down to like the pithiest piece that really checks all of these boxes. And then that becomes a lens in which you could push every opportunity through. So every time someone comes to you with an idea for a job or a project, you look at it and you're like, is this actually aligned with my authentic context?
I love that. I love that. Okay, so send that to us like on DM or tell us where people can find it so that when they're listening to it this later, they know too.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't remember the link, but I will give it to you to share.
Okay, give it to me to share, and we'll be
Yeah.
sure to share it in our stories. And yeah, maybe add it to your bio profile link or something, and then we can
Yes, perfect. I will.
there. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's awesome because I think that I feel like now that you're listing that out, that's something that I kind of do in my head
Mhm.
kind of naturally. Like I always like to compartmentalize and put things into buckets.
Yeah.
So I think I started doing that, but I love that it's really just like written out and that you can sort of work with the sheet and feel like you have a base, which I think is really helpful for people. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and then also
Yeah.
like permission to reevaluate at any interval. Like I'm actually just thinking about this for myself right now. I'm like, I actually haven't done this worksheet since my new diagnoses and my needs have changed. And so I think this is a beautiful invitation to revisit the work, which we're always evolving and like revisiting the work or revisiting the conditions we want to create at every level up, I think is always really beautiful.
It's so important. And I
Mhm.
think that's actually a really great, great, great reminder. And I know for me, like that definitely happened just with COVID and everything. I felt
Mhm.
like I was already taking pretty good care of myself and I was already doing a lot of things for my health and, had my routines. But when COVID happened and the pandemic happened and just like everything, I've had to severely reevaluate so many things. And so, yeah, I could probably stand to do the worksheet too.
We'll do it together. Accountability
Okay, maybe
partners.
we will. Maybe we should have like a session with people or something. Who
That would
knows?
be so fun. I
That'd
love
be
it.
so fun. I love that so much. Awesome. Okay, so people figure out what their zone of genius is and what their needs are and how they can access it.
Mhm.
And then from there, is it really just like taking steps towards your dream?
Yeah, so then being in discovery about actually what aligns with this authentic context. So like if you're having conversations with people about a work opportunity, or you're looking for your next job, or you want to design your own business, this is literally a roadmap to that. And
Yeah.
then because I am Scorpio and reformed type A perfectionist, I love me a list and a
Amazing.
90-day plan with SMART goals. So, what is the plan coming out of this? You have this beautiful context you've created for yourself. So, what promises can you make to yourself in terms of getting in action? Because we get to the dream with, one right action at a time, one bold choice at a time, right? We don't, like, if 10 years ago I told my younger self that I would have this beautiful coaching business, I'd be like, no way. But
Yeah.
taking that one right action at a time is what got me here. So, really aligning that with a 90-day plan connected to promises and SMART goals.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that, you brought it down to like one action at a time because I don't want people to watch this and be like, I have to take action. Like, I feel like I can't get out of bed in the morning, which I
Totally.
both of us know exactly how that feels.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important to be like, okay, maybe this, takes you a while just to get through, creating this document, and you have the steps and you sort of know what you'd like to do. And then maybe a week from now, you take one action and you break it down. Super, super, super simple. I love that.
And compassionately is what I'm hearing inside of yours, what you're saying too. It's like we're breaking it down into these little pieces and we're being so kind with ourselves along the way. And I know this is true for me, but sometimes the biggest action for me is inaction. So like sometimes on my 90-day plan, like actually sit still in this for a minute, just like marinate on this or meditate on this.
Yeah, I find that like I'm very spiritual, as you know, and I find that like that's where like my spiritual sense comes out. Like I was actually just talking to a friend about this yesterday, about just like how sometimes we can do all of the things, we can do every single thing on our list, we can take as many actions as we have the energy for that day, and something still just isn't lining up and it's just not clicking. And I think that's when I've really learned to just not do, and not do exactly like what you're saying, and just kind of take my foot off the gas and just give myself permission to just be still.
Yes, you are such a beautiful teacher in that, and you've invited me into that conversation so many times, and it's so important. Like sometimes on my to-do list is do nothing and surrender, because that's work too, and sometimes we really have to be still to get the message or to get the energy to move to the next step.
Yeah, I really love that. I think that's so well said. And I hope that people who are watching just feel supported in finding your dreams and feeling like you can really just connect to what you're meant to do, and also find ways to take care of yourself and not burn out and not like just sort of jump into this capitalistic success train that like is not good for anybody, but especially not when you have a chronic illness.
Yeah, I do believe that the world is like so drastically changing. Like autoimmune disease is on the rise, chronic illness is on the rise. And so like literally the entire world is now being invited into a conversation that we've been in for so long because we've had to be in it. So I see so many people starting to reimagine what their work is like. And I just feel like for once we have the one up because we've been in this conversation for so long. Like we know what it means to have to really take care of our needs and be so considered in the choices that we make. And so,
Yeah, and I think we spoke about this on one of our former IGTVs too, of just like, one of our former Chroniconvos rather, of just like, it's kind of a superpower, the stuff that we have to go through. Yeah. Like when you have a chronic illness and you have an autoimmune disease and, all these things. And so I think that there is a lot in that can be used for, moving your life forward and connecting with people and achieving your dreams. But I think, as you're pointing out, like having a bit of structure around it is also really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long way.
Oh my God, totally. Well, I'm so glad that we got the chance to chat with you today, Amina. You're so amazing, and I'm excited to share your worksheets, and I'm excited to have this uploaded. So this always gets uploaded a week after we are done. So this will be available for everyone to watch on our IGTV till the end of time. You can come back to it as much as you want. And make sure that you look in the comments and follow Amina AlTai because she's awesome. She has lots of tips for you.
Oh, thank you, amazing Nitika, for having me, for this community, for this space, for these amazing community members. So excited to be with you, and just for who you be in the world. You are such a light. I'm so grateful for you.
You're so sweet. And Sarah, I love how you light up our comments. It's been a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for being here and being supportive. And yeah, love to all of you and have a great rest of your day. Mwah. Bye.